Have you ever been scrolling on Instagram or Pinterest and came across a stunning cottage garden with beautiful wildflowers and thought, I want that in my yard? Well, stay tuned to hear my secrets to create a magical garden space full of native plants that will captivate you, feed pollinators, and support local wildlife. Right, so I'm back here today working on my side yard transformation. If you missed the first half, I will link that video. Last time, if you were with me, I planted this side with some native plants. Today, I'm going to plant up this side and lay down the space for the pathway in between, going up to where the fence is. And I'm going to start out just by mowing everything down.
Since moving into my house last year, I've been dreaming of transforming my backyard from a space that contains mostly grass lawn and invasive weeds to a beautiful oasis for wildlife and a place for me to enjoy with my friends and family. The vision for this space is to be a native plant cottage garden, something that's filled with densely planted, beautiful native plants of varying heights, some really tall, some a bit smaller, but that it obscures your view a little bit as you're coming from the front of the house to the back, so that when you're walking through the gate, you walk through all of these tall, beautiful plants, and then you enter into the backyard and the rest of the space is revealed. So that's why I call this my secret garden type of space.
Okay, next up, I want to take out this wooden trim piece here. That was a ruminate from the previous homeowner's garden. I just don't need it anymore, and it's really hard to maintain this tall grass that's growing behind it that I can't do much about with this piece of wood here. So,
into my secrets for creating your own native plant cottage garden. Number 1, you're going to want to create at least a loose planting plan. Write down something. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't have to have great drawing skills, but something that allows you to know which plants you want to put where you want your pathways to go, where you want the borders of your garden to be. And in my planting plan for this section, I wrote down the species of plants that I had already purchased, along with their bloom time and color, so that I could help arrange them in my garden based on what pops of color and times of bloom I wanted to see in different areas. You'll want to think about which plants will be tallest at their full height and organize them tallest to shortest, with the tallest plants on the borders of the garden or up against a wall if you have a wall that you're working with, and the plants getting shorter as they get towards the pathway or towards the other edge of the garden. So it creates sort of a cascading effect. You also want to think about which types of plants are going to be more bushy and fill in, which plants are going to be more viney and sort of spread across the ground. And then create zones or clusters for each plant type, and feel free to break sort of the planting in rows or planting in straight lines aspect of traditional gardens to create more of that homegrown cottagey aesthetic. Normally, I will put down either cardboard saved from old boxes in the house, or I'll use landscape fabric to mark pathways in my garden and then add mulch on top later to help suppress the weeds.
In the spot where I started to put down the pathway, lots of weeds have already grown up. So I'm going to try and knock down what I can, put the landscape fabric down over top. I did want to say that for the most part, I am using cardboard as my weed suppressant with mulch and wood chips on top, because ultimately I want to add to the soil. I don't want to detract from the soil. I don't want to kill the soil life. All of this project is about building up the soil life and the health of my backyard for the benefit of me as a gardener and also all the things that live in the environment. But because this section seems to be especially weedy, and because this is intended to only be a pathway, it's a section right near the gate at the front of my yard, and it's pretty much only ever going to be walked over. It won't be grown in. I'm going to put the landscape fabric down, and I'm not as concerned about it in that spot. So the goal is to, where you see the black fabric now, mow things down, connect up to where this pathway ends, leading back into the vegetable garden, and we'll see how far far we get today. Maybe we'll do this section as well. Really, I'm just trying to create a smooth pathway. All right, let's get into it.
So now we're preparing our site for planting. If you're planting into a grass lawn or a really weedy area, as I am, you're probably going to need to kill the existing vegetation before you plant your new plants. Here is my next secret to creating your native plant cottage garden. In terms of grass removal, there's many options to kill the grass. You can use a shovel to dig it out. You can use a sod cutter. The easiest way to go about removing the grass from that section of the garden is to just smother it with cardboard or thick plastic. And while this will take some time, you may have to wait a few weeks and on a hot summer part of the year so that you can kill the grass and weeds underneath it. That is the easiest way to move forward with planting a new garden section without having to cut out all the lawn. Make sure not to leave any of the roots of the weeds if you are planning on hand pulling them, because if you do, you'll be battling those same weeds for years and years to come. This part of the process is really tedious if you don't find satisfaction in weeding or removing grass lawns. As I do, I had a lot of fun breaking up the dirt in the soil and pulling out all of the weeds in this small section of my garden. This part of the project might be easier to hire out. And now on to the fun part. We are choosing what plants we're going to plant and finally getting some plants in the ground. Planting from seed can be the most inexpensive way to cover a large area, but you may not see all the varieties you planted appear in the first year. This method requires the most patience. Planting from plugs or small plants can be an affordable way to fill in a garden quickly and be able to have more control over which plants are growing where, as opposed to planting with seed, where you don't always have as much control about which plant will grow in which spot. I used this method. I was able to purchase a flat of 50 plugs for native prairie plants from my local soil and water conservation district. I was able to purchase it in an online native plant sale in the spring, and then the plants were delivered to me in the summer. This was a really good way for me to get a lot of plants in the ground and cover a pretty large section without having to spend a great fortune. Planting larger plants will absolutely create a more dramatic effect initially, and many of the plants may flower in the same season you put them in the ground. But buying gallon or quart-sized potted plants can be much more expensive than using either seeds, plugs, or smaller, less mature plants. One thing I've often heard about native plant gardening, and my final secret to share, is that you really have to be patient. It is often said that your garden in the first year will sleep, in the second year will creep, and in the third year leap. So get started planting and be prepared to be wowed as the many seasons go by and your garden continues to grow and grow.
I am so tired. That was, I think, 50 plants that I just put in the ground, and I'm feeling it. I am going to sit down for a second, drink some water my new plants in the ground, and then show you what it looks like.
I've heard before that when you're like embarking on these big projects, there's like the excitement in the beginning, and then there's that feeling of accomplishment at the end after you've done the thing, and then in the middle, it's like the messy middle. So right now we're definitely in like the messy middle section. So like for sure, I know that this food forest is going to be beautiful. with the apple trees and the raspberry bushes and the blueberries and all the different fruit coming in at different times and all the flowers that we've planted. I know that when that comes together, it's going to be amazing. And I know that the section of pollinator plants that I planted in my native garden section is gonna just be incredible. But when you plant things as small plants or bugs or what have you, it just takes time. They've got to establish their roots. They've got to grow big. They're taking up all the energy, nutrients. They're taking the sun rays from the sun and they're, turning it into new growth, turning it into more plant growth. And that takes time. And so we're in the messy middle, but that's okay. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today in the garden. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy my creating a beautiful native pollinator garden from a weedy mess video, where I transform this space behind me. The transformation from what it was before to how beautiful it looks now is truly incredible. Go check it out. Let me know in the comments if you have ever tried planting a pollinator garden or a cottage garden or something like that in your space. And do you have any questions about native plants or pollinator gardening that I could help answer for you in a future video? If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so that you can follow along on my journey. If you like the video, please like it. When you like or comment or watch more of my videos, it really helps my channel to grow, and I really appreciate you for doing that. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.